The Glenrothes 3 Decades. Is this one you should be scrounging for? Stay tuned for the Whiskey Whistle. Hello my whiskey people, Mark here at Whiskey Whistle on YouTube, sharing a little whiskey awesomeness from Winnipeg, the center of North America, bringing you the Glenrothes 3 Decades. Now this one is a bottle on loan from a Winnipeg Whiskey Club member. That is Rick. Hi Rick. Rick Medina, thanks so much for this, for lending it to me so I can get this review on my channel. That's awesome. Beautiful presentation. I love their old style. Now they have revamped the line and they don't quite have the same sort of label style. Very similar actually. Everything else is very similar, but they've stopped using vintages and switching to ages instead, age statements. Now a vintage is a kind of age statement, but it may be a little bit confusing to some consumers, but a lot of people really like those vintages, including me. So let me get this open. Beautiful little box, very simple, a little bit upgraded from their standard one, which is nice. So it's just all cardboard, but interesting. Get that out. And he graciously gave a few sips, a few glasses of this to some other fellow members at a little event, and we had a great time. And this was definitely one of the highlights. Let me get that opened. Now, as far as bottle shapes go, I have to say, I really like the Glenrothes bottle. It's very distinct. It's probably the only really bulbous, rounded style of bottle out there. I think Ball Blair is slightly similar in a way. A little bit more flattened. This is actually absolutely a cylinder. So interesting. Okay, let me get a little bit of that poured into my Macallan Glencairn glass with a lid also given to me by another Winnipeg Whiskey Club member. So we're on a roll here. If you happen to be in Winnipeg, please do get in touch and why not join the Winnipeg Whiskey Club? Even if you're just here on business or for travel. Okay, here we go. Let's get that poured. That should do it. About 20 milliliters. Just enough to taste it. Not enough to deplete Rick's delicious bottle. He can have the last few ounces. There we go. Now let's get into the tasting. We're going to start with the color. After that, we'll check out the legs. Then the nose, the palate, and the finish before we give it a Whiskey Whistle whiskey score. All right, so let's check the color out of this one. This is all natural. A mix of whiskey from the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. 1971 was the earliest distillate, with 1998 being the youngest. It's got a really unique polished oak medium golden hue. Very nice. Okay, let me take that lid off for a moment and give it a quick whiff. I am a big Glenrothes fan, and this one is pretty amazing. All right, let's roll it around. All right, so what do we see for legs there? Fairly brisk first legs, the primary legs. Now this is 43% ABV. But look at the secondary legs, the secondary drizzle. Pretty slow and very showy. So even at 43% ABV, I expect that this will have a nice, thick, rich mouthfeel. Let's find out if that's true. Now, I think I'll let that sit for just one more minute. And what I'm smelling there, boy, that nose is a cognac lover's nose. Absolutely. Very rich. All right, so here's the details on this Speyside single malt from the Glenrothes. The Glenrothes has historically been bottled by vintage. Too bad that they changed that. This is because maturity matters more than age. It is only when a whiskey has fully matured in its cask that the fullness of the flavors emerge. We have bottled vintages from the 70s, the 80s, and the 1990s. The earliest vintage was 1971, and the latest, the 1998. This bottling, called 3 Decades, celebrates our past and present vintage releases, combining mature Glenrothes from each of those 3 vintage decades. Very cool. All right, so let's get back into that nose, shall we? And if you've tried that and you've enjoyed it, or maybe you thought it wasn't the greatest and you've got some notes, some tasting notes, some thoughts, please share them in a comment here, all right? Okay, here we go. Lots and lots of sherry. Now, when I say this reminds me of cognac, there is a real French oak nose coming from this. Absolutely. I'm guessing that's the older stock. Incredible. I am getting a little bit of the dusty, leather-bound encyclopedia volumes. I am getting very, very aged cognac, sort of a that, you know, the grape mixed with the age and the time, etc. It's got a real beautiful nose. Absolutely Oloroso sherry involved there. I wouldn't be surprised if there were possibly some ex-cognac casks in here. I'm getting some cherry freezies. Cherry freezies. Cognac. Beautiful old wood. Vintage furniture. Raisin pudding with beautiful cream, and it's creamy and it's raisiny. There's a light little bit of toasted almonds, almost burnt toasted almonds, so burnt almond. Raisin butter tarts. Now, I don't know if those are a Canadian thing, but it's just a tart with brown sugar, raisins, cinnamon, I believe, vanilla, and that very delicious French strawberry jam. We usually get the Bon Maman brand, which is quite nice, and my kids enjoy that a lot. Me too. All right. Well, very complex, very tight, not really showing all of its flavors and scents. I have a feeling that adding some water will open that up some more and help me figure out how that smells a little bit better. But let's get on to the palate, okay? Cheers, and a big cheers to Rick. Cheers to all the Winnipeg Whiskey Club members. Cheers. Delicious European sherry-influenced Scotch whiskey. Big Oloroso. That's that delicious strawberry jam. A little bit of nice cocoa powder. Coming back to this again, this is only the second time I've had even a taste of this, but the finish has some nice warmth to it, some fullness, just enough dryness to really balance out the sweetness, and that strawberry jam note, some fruit sugar, fructose. And as I have now added this to my pantry, there is a slight feeling, a slight flavor of golden syrup coming through in the finish here. And if you can find golden syrup, I highly recommend you get some, because it's pretty tasty. And to think that that is just a type of sugar in its process of becoming sugar, your molasses. Anyway, it's semi-refined sugar, and lovely, lovely stuff. Sorry. Mm-hmm. All right, one more taste. Some nice gentle warmth on the palate as well. Again, the predominant flavors I'm getting here are that strawberry, that cocoa, and some slight sweet fruit sugary note, dried fruits, some dark raisins, and some very ripe, almost dripping Bing cherries. Pretty delicious. And yes, the mouthfeel is pretty mouth coating. There's a slight waxy feel about it, and pretty delicious stuff. Now, this is very, very different from the 16-year-old Glenrothes that I had years ago, and there are some similarities with the new Glenrothes. What is it called? Master something or other. So there's a slight little bit of a connection there, but this is actually very unique, and I think it's that really old vintaged Glenrothes here that is just different era, different barley, different methods, different wood, different casks, different content in those old casks. And so you have a very, very different flavor coming from those casks, I believe the 70s and the 80s. All right, let's add a little bit of water. A little over 15 milliliters left. Okay. Now, 43%, and actually it's not lacking at all. I think that for this whiskey, I don't think 46 wouldn't have made a big difference. I wouldn't have gone over 46 for that if I were the master blender. Come on now, I'm using the wrong hand, that's why. There we go. 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 drops. That is about a third of a milliliter, 0.3 milliliters that I've added. Now, though this is a blend of vintages, and if we were to put an age statement on there, well, it would be 10-year-old whiskey. But it's blended with things from the 80s, from the 70s, obviously in lesser amounts. It's probably 40% 10-year-old, and then 60% other vintages. But those are really having a big impact here. All right, so let's see now with water, how has the nose changed? It's bringing out some spice. Obviously vanilla is coming through there. But there's a nutmeggy essence that's coming through, as well as some very, very light cinnamon. And remember, when you add water, which is also known as releasing the serpent, there's going to be some sort of a boom of alcohol that can sometimes waft up So give it some time. There we go. Beautiful vanillas here. Utter vanilla bean, the actual bean, the sticks. I almost want to eat one of those, but I have a feeling that the taste will not follow through with that smell. Butter pecan ice cream. Yeah, some toasted pecans now. So I noticed almonds before. It's a little bit more of that walnutty pecan type of a flavor scent coming through here now. Well, very interesting. Yes, very creamy. And I'm salivating thinking about trying this again. All right, so let's get into the palate with water. Cheers, folks. The water has really toned down the dryness. Those raisin tarts, butter tarts, are coming through there. We still have the strawberry jam. That straight up fruit sugar note has diminished a little bit. Still very pudding-like. A delicious vanilla pudding with lovely, lovely raisins that have been sort of cooked and reduced into a kind of a syrup with a little bit of golden syrup drizzled on there. Well, it's really delicious. The finish is very long, very fruity, vanilla. Still slightly dry, and I'm liking that, so that's great. There's a slight pepperiness on the tip of my tongue, which is almost refreshing in a way. I think the coolest thing about this Glenrothes 3 Decades is the fact that you are getting your fix of old whiskey, and it's being presented in a way that makes it just very, very accessible. I don't think that's very, very expensive. I can't recall the price. It might be, I don't know, $300-400. I'm guessing. I can't say for sure. It might be a little bit less. It could be a little bit more. And of course, you will not see that going forward. So if you're interested in Glenrothes and you're liking the tasting notes that I'm throwing out here, then, hop to it and grab yourself one of these. Final taste here. Some really neat beeswax. A slight, really, really dark honey note coming through. Delicious. Well, it's time to get on to the WhiskyWhistle whiskey score for the Glenrothes 3 Decades. Whoa. That's close. Good thing it's not 4 decades, because that's about how old I am. So what's that going to be, folks? It's going to be 91 out of 100. You heard it. 91 out of 100 is the WhiskyWhistle whiskey score for the Glenrothes 3 Decades. From Edrington, the same company as Macallan and Highland Park. Well, thanks again, Rick. What a treat to try that, and I hope you all like that. Again, jump to it if you want to grab a bottle of that, because there may not be many left. Well, again, let me know what your thoughts are on the Glenrothes, and especially this 3 Decades. If you've watched this video until now, why not think about supporting WhiskyWhistle on Patreon? Patreon.com/WhiskyWhistle will get you there. And there is $1, $3, and $7 options that you can check out. You can always set limits to keep your budget to what you want per month. So check me out on Patreon. Make sure you subscribe to WhiskyWhistle right over here and hit the bell above. Ding ding. That way you're notified of the future Whiskey Whistles through your email inbox or through your notifications on your smartphone. Take care, everybody. Thanks again, Rick. Bye now.